Hi, guys. My name is Dr. Jamie Adam, and this is Nursing School Masterclass Live. I remember what it was like being in nursing school, and now I'm a nursing professor. And so, my goal is to make nursing school less stressful so that you can have more time for the people and the things that you love. So, like and subscribe to my channel, and that way you won't miss any of these weekly live coaching calls. So, tonight we're talking about appealing exam questions. So, maybe you've been in this situation. You took the exam, you felt like you knew a topic front and back, you felt really confident, and then you end up missing a question. And when you look at the question, maybe during your exam review, you disagree with what the answer was supposed to be. So maybe you had a different answer in mind and you think, "Hey, I know that I learned this correctly and I really do believe that I should have gotten credit for that question." So, if that's your situation, then you can appeal, and if you appeal, you want to use these three steps. So, I'm going to talk to you about three steps to appealing exam questions. Okay, so the very first step, you won't be surprised by this, is to number one, do your research. Okay, so do your research. You want to get back in, look over your materials, look over your notes, and really investigate that topic or drug or condition that you missed. You want to make sure you know what's actually true and accurate about that topic. So dig in there and investigate. And you may uncover that, okay, well, maybe you didn't know the topic as well as you thought you did, or maybe you just misread the question. So that might have happened. But either way, because you're digging back into that topic and you're emotionally invested in it because you're sure that you got it right, that means that information that you're reviewing is really going to stick with you and it's going to cement in your mind and it's going to be there for long term memory and you're not going to miss it again on the final. So, this is a really good process, even if you find out that, oh, I guess I was in the wrong and I really did miss the question. That's okay. This whole process is so helpful for learning. Okay, so step two. So once you've done your research, then step two is really to gather your evidence. So this is going to be the key step. So you need to gather the evidence for why you think that you should get credit for that exam question. So if you notice that there was a discrepancy in the notes somewhere or in a PowerPoint slide, maybe in the textbook or some resource for class, you want to gather that evidence. So take screenshots, um, write down the specific page number and the paragraph where you found the information. Write down the slide that it came from, or maybe even an article that supports your stance. So maybe it's something that you felt was true, and so you have this scholarly article to back it up. So as long as it's coming from either the materials your instructor has given you, or your textbook, or another scholarly source like a scholarly peer-reviewed article, all of those can be evidence for supporting your case for why your answer should be considered correct. Okay. So, and I'm just thinking about my own personal example here. I remember one time in class we were talking about fluid and electrolyte levels, and I was talking to the students about what the normal electrolyte level should be. And when I was speaking it to them, I was correct, but I realized later that on my slide, there was the wrong number was listed on the slide. And so a student called me on it. So after the exam, she came to me and said, "I noticed that I got the question wrong about this electrolyte level, and I just want you to know that the slide had that number, and so that's why I chose that answer. And even if you said it correctly in class, I went back and was studying my slides, and so that's why I chose that right answer." And so in that case, I gave the student credit. Now, she really did do a good job. She presented the slide that had the information on it. I was able to see that, and so it was a really clear and easy way for her to show me her evidence. Okay, so step 3. So 1, you've done your research. Step 2, you've gathered your evidence. And step 3, this is where you're going to communicate the concern that you have, and you're going to be professional in how you communicate the evidence. So, keep in mind that if you are asking your professor to dig into this, it takes some time and attention. So you're asking for their time and attention and consideration. So the way you ask, it matters. Okay, so do it in a kind and respectful way. Think about, addressing that email in a professional manner. So, dear Dr., Mrs., Mr., Professor, so and so. And then think about sandwiching your appeal for your request for the appeal. Okay, so sandwich it. So start off with something positive, something maybe a compliment of sorts, then discuss the appeal, and then in the email with something positive again. So sandwiching this difficult topic. Okay, so I've got an example for you. Okay, so dear Dr. Adam, I am really enjoying this class. Thank you for all the time and effort you're putting into making this a good experience for us. Okay, so that's the positive part of the sandwich. So here comes the concern. I have a concern about one of my exam questions, and I would appreciate your feedback. In the question regarding, and then fill in the blank, potassium lab values, I chose 3.2 because of what we learned in lecture on blank date. So in this case, February 15th. I've included a screenshot of the slide where you mentioned the normal lab values. I missed this question on the exam and was wondering if I could receive credit for my response. And then the other part of the sandwich, thank you for your time and consideration. I appreciate all you do. Sincerely. And then the student's name. So I can tell you in this situation that I gave credit back to this student because of how she very clearly laid out the evidence. And that, that kind and respectful approach was also pleasant for me to read and to work with. And so these steps are really the best steps that you can follow. Now, I'll tell you in honesty, very rarely do professors give points back on exams for students saying, I think the right answer should have been C and instead it was B. So that is something to realize, is that very rarely will professors give points back, but it does happen. So it's happened, I would say, at least a handful of times in the last 10 years of teaching. And every time it happened in a scenario like this, where the student provided the evidence in a very clear way and did it in a very kind and respectful way. So, and then that professor, they tweak that question or they fix their slides, and then those things don't happen the next semester, which is why we don't have very many of those reoccurring. But if it does happen to you, then you have a process you can follow. Okay, so step 1, do your research. Step 2, gather your evidence. Step 3, communicate your concern and evidence professionally. So in the end, it's your professor who has the authority to decide whether to give credit back or not. But, and you can't control the outcome, but you can control the way you appeal, the process that you use. And, really worst cases, yes, you don't get points back. Maybe your appeal is denied, but the fact that you had to go in and investigate that topic that you missed was a great learning experience for you. And it's going to come back around, whether it's on your final exam or for NCLEX. So that time is not wasted. And then, of course, best case scenario, your professor says, oh my gosh, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. You get the points back, and it's likely that other students that answered the same way you did will also get points back. So that's just a win-win. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have questions, I would love to answer them for you. And I'm just curious, have you appealed before? What was the process like? How did that go for you? How did it feel doing that? Would love to hear your feedback. So, and it looks like we have a question that came in. Any advice if you've done this and the professor's response is the correct answer isn't correct? Her answer is more correct, but the text and data contradict that. So, that's difficult. If you feel like you've provided the evidence and the professor is still pushing back and saying, I'm not going to accept that, it is frustrating and it is discouraging when that happens. And all I can say is that in the end, it is the professor's, I guess it's their choice of whether they're going to give points back or whether they're going to do anything with that information. And so unfortunately, that's a sticky situation for you as the student, but it is a learning experience. Now, probably the caveat I would throw in there is that if that was the difference between you passing a class or not, then it might be worth, petitioning maybe another faculty person, maybe going to your advisor and seeking some input on that. Maybe following the chain of command in that situation, going to your professor, and then if they're unwilling to consider it, then maybe going to your professor's supervisor in that case. So but only if it was a situation where maybe you were going to fail the class or be dismissed or something like that. Otherwise, it's just, an unfortunate situation. So, but it may not be worth pushing it up the chain of command for that one question. So, but thanks, Kyle. That's a good question. Okay, so Kyle's giving a little more information. It's our whole group, the same 7 questions. Some of us are failing and could be at a B or an A, so we really did consider talking to the director. Yeah, I have seen situations like that where a class came together and, maybe came together and constructed an email together and sent it to the director, or maybe asked for a meeting to that professor's supervisor to be able to talk about it and discuss it. It may not be overturned, but it may be a situation where just letting someone else into the situation could be really helpful. So, I think that in best case scenario, when a professor realizes that it's a situation that's affecting multiple students, then that might change the situation where that professor is going to direct, going to pull all those students together and direct a response to all of those students. So that can happen. But if you guys, your group is not getting a response from your professor, or you really do feel that you can provide evidence for why you think you should have had credit, then it's definitely worth getting another pair of eyes. So maybe that's informing your advisor, or maybe that's going to that professor supervisor. So those kind of situations are a little sticky, but yeah, when it makes a difference of someone failing or not, then that's what I would call high stakes, and definitely worth pushing back and asking questions. So thanks, Kyle. You're very welcome. Sorry you're going through that, for sure. Okay, guys. Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions you have about nursing school or nursing student life, work life, school balance, any of those kinds of questions. Happy to help. You can certainly post your comments in the chat. And just know that every Wednesday I go live, and so I've been going live for a while on Facebook and have just moved to going live on YouTube. So this is where I'll be from now on, and so you can find me here at 8:30 p.m. Wednesday nights, Central Time. And otherwise, I will see you next week, guys. Have a great week, and see you next week.